It's extraordinary to be on the planet in this time of accelerated change and transformation.
You have been exploited and you have been controlled for quite a long time, but this is ending.
When you have a mystical experience, when you have a direct connection, it destroys doctrine and dogma.
Ritual is so important. It's so much a part of anyone's relationship with their true self, the source, the animation to all things. You must nurture that relationship because it's for all of us.
Anything that denies our sovereignty, our love, our forgiveness, our ability to heal is a form of evil.
Every living being, every frog, the mountain, each person is a gem in this matrix.
Guy here, welcome to my podcast. And before I say anything, I just want to say thank you. If you've been tuning into my podcast throughout 2025 and certainly getting something from the conversations like I certainly do as well, just know that it's appreciated and it feels good to know that they might have helped someone else that I've never met before in some way. So if that's you listening to this, please let us know in the comments, connect. And if you are a regular listener to the podcast, let me know. I love hearing from everyone. And of course, as I always ask, let us know where you are in the world. I've been podcasting since I've been podcasting since 2013, believe it or not, but this podcast let it in. I started at the beginning of 2018 when I sold my company and moved into, I guess, the field of retreats and events and workshops and what I do now. And this podcast has been a way of paying it forward ever since and having amazing conversations. Each year I like to reflect back upon certain conversations and bring them to the table like I just have today. And like you, we've all been, maybe you've been feeling the squeeze. I know I certainly have. There's been certainly planetary changes and lots going on the planet. But if anything, it all brings us back to each and every moment, and that we do have an opportunity to feel into who we really are and see what our potential really is. Anyway, enjoy this podcast. Like I said, it's been a pleasure bringing them to you, and hopefully long may it continue. Much love from me, and hopefully I will meet you somewhere in person, somewhere around the world at one of our events one day. Thank you. It is certainly a unique time in history right now. It feels that way. That's for sure.
And part of my interest in astrology, so I actually started out in cultural anthropology, then was in clinical psychology, then morphed into astrology. And part of my interest in astrology has been looking at the larger cycles historically that we go through, the astrological ages, the 24,000 year precessional cycle. So from that perspective, this is such a profound time on the planet where we're really moving from one astrological age into a new one, the Age of Aquarius, but we're actually at the end of a 24,000 year cycle and the beginning of a new one, and coming out of the time in that precessional cycle when we're at our lowest level of consciousness, the last 5,000 to 6,000 years, into a radical shift into higher consciousness. So it's extraordinary to be on the planet in this time of accelerated change and transformation.
At what point are we within that? Like when you think of my mind is going 24,000 years, like, holy moly, that's a lot. That's a fair chunk of time, right? And time frame. And then we speak about this cycle coming to an end and coming into the new one. Over how many years is that transition, if that makes sense? Is there like an epicenter, a point of like, right, this is the definitive turn?
I mean, that's a great question. There is no sort of definitive endpoint, beginning point. It is a transition time. I really have a lot of respect for Bibhu Dev Misra and his work on the Yuga cycle, which is the same as the precessional cycle. It's analyzing that 24,000 year cycle that we go through. And he describes how he thinks we go through a 300 year transition period between ages. What I think is different about this time that we're in is that I think we're really at an extraordinary point in our evolution as humanity when we have the capacity to make an evolutionary leap rapidly into a higher consciousness. Normally, in the precessional cycle, we go through 12,000 years of the ascending cycle of increasing in consciousness, and then 12,000 years of a descending cycle, which we're just coming out of. But I believe that instead of just incrementally increasing in consciousness again, we're at a very unique choice point as humanity where we can actually make an evolutionary leap into a higher dimensional consciousness.
That's wild. That's wild. And okay, the two things that are screaming at me, like, is it's opening up so many loops already. And one that's come to mind is about consciousness itself. Then, what is consciousness? But then, what you're saying then is that the way these cycles and the way the planets move and the stars align are actually affecting our us individually and as a collective, the way we behave, the way we think, the way we feel, the way we interact with each other within the world right now.
Oh, beautifully said. That's exactly right. And I'm not totally clear what that is that has influenced that 12,000 years of increasing consciousness, 12,000 years of decreasing consciousness. Again, Bibhu Deb Misra, he and I interact a lot. He would say it's where we are in relationship to the galactic center and how we're impacted by energies coming from the galactic center. I also think it's related to the fact that it is most likely that our sun and solar system is a part of a binary star system, meaning that our sun is in a dance orbiting with another star. And there's a lot of evidence that would indicate that that star is the star Sirius, the brightest star in our sky. And the binary star orbiting is like a figure eight. And I think it may also be influenced that when we move furthest from our binary star, we forget what we once knew and who we were. As we come back closer to that star, we begin to regain the wisdom and the consciousness that we had lost. So I think there are a number of factors that come into play energetically, but I do believe that this is a unique time where we have this chance to step out of that repeating cycle and actually move into higher consciousness.
Oh, what do you think it's going to take for us to do that? To go, yes, let's do this, and everyone's like going for it. Because here's the thing, Heather. Like, I was telling you a little bit about my journey off air, and through observation, and now being 50 years old, I've been able to live enough life to start to see my own evolution of awareness and consciousness and the relationship to myself, and feel into that it's a very real, tangible thing, that it is a growth and that's with it, and the way I interact with people, the universe, and energies is evolving. It continues to evolve, but it was almost like I was shut down to it, and something had to be awakened within me for those elements of me to sprout and grow. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, that's so well said. And what you were saying before we got on the recording about going through that spiritual awakening and that Kundalini rising, it activated, I'm sure, your remembrance and awareness. Oh, I'm a soul self having this human experience. We come into this realm from, the spiritual realms, and then we forget and we get caught up in this human experience. And we need support to awaken and remember that we are infinite beings. We're soul selves journeying through these different lifetimes and incarnations. And when we begin to awaken to that and align with our soul self again, then it really opens the doors to that higher spiritual consciousness.
Yeah. So do you feel that we're going to see all this within our lifetime, these choice points and making, like, is it going to be the next few years? Do you see it over the next decade, this lifetime, this transition that's talked about a lot at the moment?
It is talked about a lot, and I really believe that we are at a critical choice point as humanity, and that we are being guided and supported to be in this evolutionary leap. But we have a choice, and we can resist that and try to cling to the paradigms of the past, or we can open to the ways the energies of the earth and sky are trying to guide us to go through this transformational process. And my sense from my reading of the astrological energies is that this time from 2025, particularly March 2025 to 2032, is the critical transition time and critical choice point. And my sense is that if enough of us awaken, open to this higher consciousness, and emanate that into the morphogenic field, the collective consciousness can shift. But if too many of us are clinging to the patterns of the past and resisting this transition, then I think we'll be on a very different trajectory starting in 2032.
Why do you feel, or what have you learned, that a lot of this information is suppressed? It hasn't been easily accessible. It certainly feels like there's a momentum now in this day and age, like with platforms like this, and people are becoming hungrier and hungrier. But what are your thoughts and feelings around that suppression?
It's dangerous. You can't control mystics. And so as the church, and you see this in Islam as well. There's fights against the Sufis. Sufis are on the outs with most of Islam, because when you have a mystical experience, when you have a direct connection, it destroys doctrine and dogma and belief. And so now you have this direct experience of God. You can't be controlled anymore. You don't fit into the paradigm. And so in the Western monastic tradition, that's what they did. They put all these kind of people in the monasteries and convents. Now, Eastern Orthodoxy and Christianity, they maintained some larger thread of mysticism in the daily life of the people, but it was rigidly controlled. But they at least had it. Western Protestantism cast it out completely. So it got tossed out, baby with the bathwater, after the age of enlightenment, the age of reason, and it just had no fit for it anymore. And so if you're at a cocktail party and you're with a bunch of your peers and people you don't know, professional people, say, and you lost your mother 6 months ago, and 3 months ago, your mother came to you in a dream, but it was unlike any other dream that you had. You knew you were in a dream, and you knew she was there, and she came there to talk to you, but she didn't use words. She radiated telepathically a message of love or beauty or forgiveness or whatever the message was. From that moment on, you knew that she wasn't dead, and that your grief practice, the practice of your grief, is transformed because you now know that she's not dead. You're still grieving, you still miss her, but now you've changed your course. You've shifted 5 degrees, which means your trajectory on the long term is going to be, 40 degrees off of where you were headed for in the first place. And imagine you're at this cocktail party and you're sipping your cocktail and you say, well, let's, I have something to say. My mother came to me in a dream and she communicated to me that she loved me. And most people would be afraid to admit that they had that experience. And so if you're in a group and someone had that experience, they probably wouldn't say it. And 2, the other people would be like, what is this person's problem? This is not rational. This is not materialistic. And so it becomes socially isolating. So nowadays, people are talking about it. But even 10 or 15 years ago, when my book came out in 2015, I was in the forefront of people's coming out about near-death experience. And I came out purposefully to try to shatter the prohibition about talking. And I kept it a secret for 20 years. I told my wife, I told 2 friends, one because he was my best friend from childhood, and he could tell that I was, something was wrong. And then I told my wife because I should have. And then I told somebody because I had to tell him, because if I didn't tell him, he wouldn't have understood what he witnessed. He witnessed something, and it was no context for him. And then but I kept it a secret for 20 years, and I wanted to build my credibility. So I got this, an Ivy League degree. I became a professional. I worked in these highfalutin churches. I worked in television. I published a lot of material. I built my credibility, and then I came out because I didn't want to be cast off. And my family, when I came out finally, my family didn't believe me. As the book is being published, my dad died 5 years ago. He didn't believe me in the end, and questioned why I was doing what I was doing, which is fine. I mean, I don't expect to be believed, but it goes to show that talking about it puts you on the outs with people. Mm. And so part of the whole thing that I'm doing now is trying to, what you're doing here, what your podcast is doing, what your retreats are doing, is I want to bring it into the public square. I just want to talk about it. Let everybody talk about their mystical experiences so we can see that, oh, PhDs and doctors and janitors and bus drivers and bartenders, they've all had some kind of experience that they're afraid to talk about. But if everybody's talking about it, it becomes safer to talk about. And that's what I'm after, is safety to talk about it.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, it's critical. Hey, I mean, once you have an experience of some kind, it becomes undeniable. But until you have that experience, though, it's extremely challenging. And you don't even realize how much your beliefs, your ego, the cultural beliefs, everything is entwined within you that's actually shaping your perception of reality at any given moment. And that's what's mind-blowing. And I'm curious to ask you a couple of more questions that were coming in then. What are your thoughts on people going after it, looking for mystical experiences, wanting to connect to the divine, as opposed to, because obviously spiritual bypassing can be a thing where we don't face the things that are going on in our life to explore the wounds within us. I find it's a dance between the exploration of this, but also dealing with what's present with us. I mean, what are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, once you have a deep mystical experience, and there are variations of it. I should describe mysticism first.
Please.
Mystical experiences, they are experiential. They have a beginning and an end. They're noetic. And they're ineffable. So they happen to you. They start and stop. They leave a mark and knowledge inside yourself that's unspeakable. You can't really articulate it because it happens in a space where there's no language. And so all the language of all the mystics throughout the history of the world, myself included, it's all metaphoric. Metaphor, simile, allegory, myth, symbol. That's the only language. That's why poetry, Rumi, Hafez, that's why these Emily Dickinson, that's why the poetry works so well. To answer your question, though, that it's a tricky thing, because if you have a desire. So I was listening to this podcast the other day. I listened to the telepathy tapes. I don't know if you're familiar with those. They are a research project into autistic, non-speaking people, and it turns out that they are telepathic, and they communicate with each other, and that they might be trilingual. And even though the education system, at least in the United States, keeps them at a third grade level till they're out of high school, they're actually turns out to be highly educated because they have other capacities that we don't normally have. So and I was watching this podcast, this guy who goes out of body all the time, and he wanted to be psychic, and he wants to be psychic for his own self. And when he encountered some of these autistic people in their realm, They kicked him out because you can't have ego and have this experience. If you have a desire for it, like an egoic, I'm going to be the magic man, then you won't actually have it. The desire of a mystic is to be in the presence of the divine, period. That's it. It's not to have any super magical powers. It's not even to have an experience. It is by practicing the presence of the divine, it makes you available to the experience. But if you're after the experience while you're practicing the presence of the divine, then you won't get it. So it's you have to have the intuitive desire for the divine, and you can work at it. But if you're after it for egoic reasons, it won't grab you, because the one thing that it can't do or won't do is allow selfishness. And so that's part of it. And the other part of it is that mystical experience, once you begin having a mystical life, you won't have any choice but to face your shadow side. It'll kick your butt, and it'll do it in ways that, say for instance, I was just talking to this guy earlier today, and he went through a period of retreat and fasting for about 3 years in a remote Alaskan cabin on purpose. And he was after the presence, not after psychic experiences. But he had a whole ton of psychic experiences, because that's what happens. You don't go after the gift, you go after the giver. But then a few years go by, and the 100% of his experience is now down to 25%. And so he's in what's called the dark night of the soul, where it reduces your capacity to have the experience, which drives you into a longing for it. And that involves having to be in your darkness, your own shadow self. You have to look at you. You have to look at the things where you're still attached. And just this week, I made a mistake this week, based in my egoic self, and I had to face that, and I'm facing it right now. And it's good. I'm to the place in my practice where I'm able to recognize that now with help, and I'm understanding of my own immortality and the own frailty of my human nature. So I can forgive myself and progress. So I think that in a more superficial form of spirituality, spiritual bypassing will actually do you damage, because you won't grow the way that you need to grow if you don't look at the dark sides of yourself.
You have been exploited and you have been controlled for quite a long time, but this is ending. And I think that's why they'll talk about it now, because we're waking up en masse to the extent that it is ending. And they're very clear. The Z's are very clear, which is beautiful. This is in the first chapter of the book. Consciousness itself is in control now. There's no entity. There's no group of entities. I even said, well, what about the planets? They're conscious. Yes, they're going through this themselves, because this wave of consciousness that we're talking about, that we're all experiencing right now, it's coming through the entire cosmos. Nothing is going to stop it. And they said, warring cannot continue in this consciousness. The earth would implode before these things would be continuing. They can't continue in the new consciousness that's moving through. So where's that leave us, right? So many are interested in us to see, are they going to wake up? Many are here to help us. For however many beings that might be trying to control whatever that species is, we don't need to name it. You have thousands of beings, dozens of them surrounding each one of us, that are here ushering us forward. It's okay. You're on the right path. They're always speaking to us, but they're playing by fair rules. The others don't.
So that new wave of consciousness that you speak of, that is sweeping through right now, and you speak of embodiment as well, of that new wave of consciousness, I'm assuming, and What is the potential of us humans? Where can we take this, do you feel, in our
Oh,
lifetime?
oh, we can, in our lifetime, it's so beautiful. It's already happening. And okay, one of the wonderful things about chaos, which the Z's say this period of, uh, their exact words, I wrote them down. This is going to be a very messy dance between people and power over the next decade or so, right? And this was recorded in 2023. And they said it's going to be messy, it's going to be chaos, it won't be pretty. But this is what I've come to see as the beauty in it. We've taken positions, we've all been misled, disinformed and misinformed. We've siloed ourselves, so we're getting reinforcement of our thoughts and views. Doesn't matter what side you're on, it's happening all across the board. So this is very interesting. It's starting to create ruptures in families, relationships. People are getting divorced over politics, right? Didn't used to be that way in my parents' generation. Republican, Democrat, they lived peacefully together. They might even vote for the opposite candidate. No big deal. Now, I don't need to tell you what's happening in the United States, and probably I know many other countries of the world too. So it's dividing people through this siloed information and a split in consciousness, which is actually, it's frustrating and we get angry and hurt, but it's actually giving us something to bounce off of. So we're making critical decisions of what's acceptable and not, because this is a time for um, outdated systems, institutions, to start collapsing and start having grassroots build up with the new institutions and the new ways of doing business. And that's everything from money to education, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think we need to look too far to see that destruction in these areas are happening very rapidly now. And
Yeah.
now we can say, whoa, I didn't mean for it to happen like that. No, I'm not down with that, but I am down with this part. And now we can start actually employing some logic to what's acceptable and what's not in building this new society that we are co-building now together. If you didn't have something this extreme, it would take forever to get to this point.
Yeah.
So the chaos is by design and for purpose to set us on our path of finding what really matters to us. What is our hierarchy of needs? And if we care about others, what do we believe society's hierarchy of needs should look like to serve everybody? We wouldn't have looked at it if we didn't have chaos. So chaos is beautiful, but then that brings up the subject of trying to find truth ultimately. And that's where the embodiment of the consciousness comes in. Truth, as they speak about in the book, is going to, it's already begun. And they said in another 20 years, we'll be looking at least a quarter of the population that will be living this way. I mean, just consciously now, automatically living this way. And that is taking the field of information around you, everything that you're being exposed to, and rather than just grabbing onto a convenient thought and then associating with someone else or some other doctrine or political party, no associations. You start taking the information, the experiences you're exposed to, and then running them down into the heart. And this is very practical, very practical. In fact, I've done it a lot of times, even on podcasts, where if you just take a moment, think of something a little irritating, grating, whatever, something irritating, and you think, and then just take a breath or two. And then you just take that irritating thought and just physically watch yourself dropping it kerplunk down in the heart. Sit with it for just a breath or two. It is quite surprising how different that thought looks and feels once you've run it through the heart. And they said that's what everybody's watching. Back to your question a few minutes ago. These beings, we are a species who is going to begin merging higher mind with heart, which is great capacity for intuition and creativity. And you're starting to get a much more soothing kind of reflection back of how to handle pretty much anything. So if anyone wants to, when this is over, just do that little experiment with something yourself and you'll see it's like, oh, God, it wasn't that big deal at all. Or have a little compassion for the person. It comes out differently. So we're going to begin making decisions and blending higher mind with heart. And many species want to see the result of what this can bring, because some of these aren't embodied. Some of them are in areas of the cosmos where their planet has already lost its biological life, or much of it, or they have started also making the transition to less physical form. But to have a species, just what I'm looking out on right now here in Northern California and the Sierra foothills, and blossoms and beautiful trees, the diversity of life forms on this planet is unbelievable, of every kind. And to be able to merge the most sophisticated being on the planet, I mean, some would argue it's dogs. You won't get an argument from me, but let's just say, for the purpose of analytics and such, humans. Okay, we're going to say humans. So to take this being and run that level of intelligence and creativity through our being, through our bodies and hearts, where we start now being able to actually discern truth, that's of great interest. Again, this is something that some are desiring to see on other planets, and we know they're already doing some of that. We all know about abductions and such. They're already, scarfing up a little bit of our DNA and experimenting.
This is fascinating what you talk about, because it resonates so much with my journey, actually, because the moment I started to open my heart fully and understood what that meant, and not actually metaphorically, and how it actually supports my thinking process, not my thinking process influencing my whole body, if that makes sense, and
Yes.
allowing that knowing and wisdom to come through, my whole life is in a completely different trajectory. And by actioning what's wanting to come through, it's been I feel like I'm forever learning, but also embracing life in the moment. Is unbelievable. And
that is good for you. I mean, obviously that's why you're doing what you're doing now,
yeah,
is because you got it. So you're one of the way showers,
yeah,
that are starting to show what it means and what it looks like, and what were your struggles getting going, what did you have to let go of to live by the heart. But this is a story that's emerging, from many of the people you interview. This story is emerging everywhere. So the Z's just wanted to inculcate that throughout the book, and they did. They brought this up many times. Remember, this is all now about living through the heart, and this body is just the most amazing tuning fork. Any information we need, we can get certainly the basic truths from our body before our brain ever gets it. And the brain has so many filters now. The lower mind was really only to keep us, as my guides once tried to joke, they're not funny, said, it was only to keep you from bumping into things. But it took over, and the finer, higher mind has been squeezed out.
The body is the lowest transmuted state of what we call the animation, the pulse. So the body is puppeteered by the energy. The energy is puppeteered by the spirit. The spirit is puppeteered by the consciousness. The consciousness is puppeteered by the pulse, which is what we call the mother, which is the animation to all things. So the pulse is constant. It never leaves. It is eternal and permanent. Whereas everything within the flesh, thoughts, feelings, emotions, transmuted into a state of awareness, is transitory, and it is limited. It is a diminished return. So it's a wave that takes place. It's like a firework. It'll shoot off, it'll have a peak, and then it'll fall back into itself, which is what that expression of the body is. So most people get past it. What I find is a lot of spiritual seekers, they go, oh, I got a teacher, they gave me a transmission, and now I'm Brahman, I'm cosmic consciousness. And that's fantastic. And 99% of the time, this is very true. And then they find this path where they end up finding that they can't hold that resonance, because we go back to the energy. The energy is puppeteering the body. So that energy potential can only be held if you understand that your attention intention forms that distortion creating from this material. And this is vibratory, frequential, resonant. You must be able to hold that resonance like you're holding a note when you're singing. You must be able to maintain that and draw it into yourself. This is where the adaptation, the stress, and then the expansion comes into your rite of passage. It's a conditioning that takes place that is not about the mind. It's not about the personality or the identity. When people start to get down to, as my grandmother would say, the brass tacks, The simplicity of that is it's all energy, frequency, vibration.
I'm loving this conversation. Well, it's not a conversation. I'm loving listening to you, mate, and how you break this down, because it's actually very relevant for me right now. And that whole, like, I've clearly noticed over my period of time that holding of energy is getting stronger and stronger. But in terms of being able to just maintain it, right, as opposed to feel like I've been dragged through something with my ass handed to, and then limp out the other side and take 10 days to get over. It's improved a lot, because my heart's always been there to want to support others, run retreats, hold space, and ignite a fire within somebody else to know that they have potential too. I think that's my gift, is sharing that inspiring somebody else to take the action. But it's taxing. It's hard work, like working with energy and letting it through. But over time, it's definitely like reps in the gym or something. But my question to you is that, how much do you feel like when you say they have these experiences but can't hold it, right? Is trauma, is past lives trauma, it's karmic debt, or whatever you want to explain it, within our field? Because the more I've healed myself, or continue to inquire that healing, the more it seems to liberate this energy that is being held within myself.
Yeah, I mean, this is an expression, right? So generally speaking, the alchemical process is such for Taoist in architecture. You have your upper dantian, which is the sun, and it holds all the light. You have the middle dantian, which is the earth. It holds all the information. You have the lower dantian, that is the moon, and it holds the energy and the magic that comes with it. So you merge the earth and the sun, and you have complete consciousness, and you have dominion over everything within this material state. That charge you got right now was the aha moment. And so when you take those two potentials and then you form the lower dantian, that's where you return to the primordial mother, that pulse, and it is permanent. And so what happens is, when people experience a retreat with yourself, or they're identifying with this trauma or triggers that are being evoked through the flesh, you're transmuting it. So the body is the anchor. The body is the animation of this tuning fork. You're able to decipher. I walk into a room, I know that person over there is angry. I can see that person's hangry or even happy. All these different variables come with your body contracting and expanding. This is back to the great bellows. And so when you start to get a rhythm of that, even with not having a really deep, intimate understanding of it, your body will give you very clear signal as to where you are and what you're doing within this energy potential. But when you pull it into the center point, the instant activation is the gateway. So between the breath in and the breath out is that primordial state that returns you to the mother. When you hold your breath, you leave the body and you access immortality. This is what we call the diamond of perfection.
Is that the Wuju or Wuji?
That's the Wuji, yeah, the Wuji, yeah. And so you can get a instant NDEOBE experience by that holding of breath, because everything else fades away. You are now going back to your primordial state. And the more you condense that and hold that energy, the more it transmutes. And through a process of cultivation, you go from the respiration of the body and you breathe from consciousness. And all of a sudden, all bets are off. It's a whole nother ball game, brother. It's a whole nother ball game.
Are we, with the realms you get into now, are we talking about what ascended masters are achieving, and that, where all the great texts there is being able, like you say, breathe through? How did you phrase that? Not breathe through the lungs, but breathe through consciousness.
You're breathing through consciousness. Consciousness is capturing that. That is the pulse, brother. That is the pulse. That is now. And so, when I start students on specific practices, it starts with a body activation, and then you create a relationship with the breath, because the breath is moving the chi. You call it energy, prana, whatever you want to call it. That is energy. with that, you're getting a very intimate relationship with the yin and yang, breathing in and breathing out. And you start to connect to it. This is what we call the amber effect. It's a cultivational practice where you turn into an amber of a cigarette, where you are just glowing and your breath is attached to everything. And if you draw it and put your intention to anything, it holds that energy. It encapsulates it. It imbues it. This is part of the ancient practices of ritual. And ritual is so important. It's so much a part of anyone's relationship with their pulse, their true self, the mother, the source, the animation to all things. You must nurture that relationship because it's for all of us. And the more and more you slow things down, the more and more they become a part of you. And so the good old rule of thumb is always, if you think it's too slow, it's not slow enough. And that's how you start to accumulate, you absorb. And, and for the audience, guys, experiencing the pulpating of my hands as I'm playing with dough within his auric field, he can feel that. I know he's very humble. He doesn't want to talk about it. I'm sorry I called you out on this, but you are experiencing that density. This is a mastered state of awareness, brother. And people dream about being able to obtain that type of consciousness. And we're right here. And it's available to all of us. And the more and more we move into it. So when you move into this center point, you have two things. You either merge with it or you're repulsed by it, repelled by it. It's part of the nature of the human condition. All the emotions, all the crap that you have, everyone says, I've got my stuff. It's the trigger, the trauma, the whatever. It's like having to move it into the center point. And so the magnetism will draw it in, or it will be a complete repulsion of that magnet, and it'll go in the opposite direction. And what you find from that is pain and suffering in the human form. And you stick with that conditioning and you own that conditioning and you forever stay there. You draw it back in and you just keep playing with it.
Is that why then sitting with the emotions and the feelings that come up, we're then not repulsing that of what you speak, because it is wanting to move through? And it's only until we sit and be with whatever is and be okay with that and be the observer to it, right?
Observing the observer.
Please.
So you have to be, again, once again, hold it. So you're sitting in it. It's moving through you. It's not happening to you. And then all of a sudden you'll transmute it at lightning pace, where literally you'll feel it and it'll feel like a breath in and a breath out, and you'll be able to transmute it as such, because there won't be an identity.
I can feel it moving through my shoulder right now. Like as you speak, it's like the very conversation. It's wild. It's absolutely wild.
And this is the unity. What we're experiencing is we're communing right now. This is a very, very ritual-based, nurtured, very potent union that we are having. And in turn, the audience that witness this and experience this are going to also feel it's visceral, it's kinesthetic, it's somatic. That's what's going on here. And that's part of the journey within the body to realize that that pulse starts from the mother and it comes all the way down to something that is what we call heaven to earth, transcending heaven to earth. So then what I refer to as my book, Immortality Crystallized Within the Material. You are now able to create within this material state. You're not bound by a limitation, and most people will talk about the story of your soul bringing you here, and this is a place of earth, pain and suffering, misery. You're coming to realize that was a misnomer and a misdirection, because the more and more you merge with your own cultivation of self, you'll realize you are serendipitous, synchronistic. It's the synchrony that we're talking about, that literally, no matter what you do, it's like you keep stepping in shit. That's just how it is. That's part of the journey.
Every living being, every frog, the mountain, each person is a gem in this matrix, and that we can enliven this matrix with our loving kindness. And that when we go into self-beratement, self-criticism, we are denying the fact that we are a gem of divine source. We are a drop, a golden drop in this web of life. And so one of the things I like to teach is helping people get from self-criticism, which is actually a kind of a shutting down, and we become too busy inventorying what's wrong with me, rather than comprehending that we are created by divinity. So our job is to purify, to take care of this vessel through good food, clean living, mindful focus, so that we can show up in the glory, in the brilliance of being our divine assignment. So when he stood back up, and I understood that we are all connected, and that even if I lost my newfound African family, I could belong in this universal family. And again, belong to the land, belong to the song, belong to the goodness in each person's heart. So he returned me to viewing my body from above, and my African mama, Mamietan, had found me, pulled my lifeless body up into her lap, and she was stopping the blood flow. And she was wailing into the sky. And I wanted to let her know, and I want to let all the listeners know, that once I crossed over, I was free of physical pain. I was so guided, I was so held, and it was just all purification to be able to receive the magnitude of love that is available to us when we cross over. So I journeyed upward, and I've done a lot of art about this. One of the gifts given to me from this death experience is to be a visionary artist and a professional intuitive. And so I journeyed upward, and again, more purification, going home to the great source. And just as I was getting ready to reunite, sometimes just the wave goes over me of gratitude, the feeling and the brilliance of what it is to be so close to divine source. And my mama in this lifetime had changed her wailing to singing. And then she called on the ancestors in the land to call me back to life. And so I heard this calling song as I was about to merge with Source. And hearing this song awakened my memory that I am part of the choir of medicine singers, those who sing at birth, those who sing when people are dying, singing to people to help their body restore, their soul and their being restore. And so I chose to turn around and come back to be one of the medicine singers on this planet, those who are helping out in the healing of our woundedness, of our confusions. And so I returned back to my body, and again my mama was holding me, and I felt barely here. I felt like the wind could blow through me. I felt like kind of crackly, dry leaves back in this frail physical body.
So the things we're building outside of our bodies actually are mimicking or reminding us of what we already are in here. And as we awaken to the possibilities of our potential, that's how we awaken our divinity, our ability to transcend perceived limitations. And that is what we're about to give away. If we give our humanness away to the technology, we give away our biology, we give away our ability to transcend our own perceived limitations. Fascinating, isn't it?
It is fascinating. It's funny, the Star Wars scene kept coming into me where he's like, nothing to see here, move along, and they're just shuffling people on while things are going on in the background, you know. And the question that's coming through for me then is that, are there forces that, with all this information that we have and that it can be applied to, not only for, I guess, control or fear or power or money or greed or whatever the agenda is behind something, that it can be just the opposite as well? That there are forces there that want to take this for good, to awaken humanity, to allow us into our potential.
See, now you're at the crux of the conversation, and this is unscripted. I had no idea.
Okay.
So let me ask you a question. How deep do you want to go with your audience? How deep do you want to take this?
As deep as you possibly can, Greg, honestly, because I feel
I'm happy. I'm happy
to
to do that, and I want to do it in a way that is responsible, honest, truthful, and factual. Because when we have these conversations, what we're doing, guys, we're taking bits and pieces, we're grabbing at snippets of a bigger picture. Once you get the big picture, those snippets begin to fall into place and make a lot more sense. So I'm a systems thinker. I was a scientist. I'm a degreed geologist that's my official degree, but I got that degree at a time when computers were coming in vogue, and I focused more on the computer aspects. So that's how I became a senior computer systems designer. A strong background, math, physics, computer science, and archaeology and cosmology. And I say that because that multidisciplinary background allows me to stay current with the new discoveries that are being made. So and I'm a systems thinker. That's why I'm saying this. I'm trained as a systems thinker. So what a systems thinker does is a systems thinker looks at the big picture to see what's going on. And then once you have that, then you can go down to the nanosecond of your life in this moment and see exactly where it fits into that bigger picture. And it helps us to make healthy decisions if we understand the context. And that's why I'm going to share what I'm going to share. The big picture on, I'm going to share this from an archaeological perspective. I think it's really interesting that way. I think most of our viewers are familiar with the Dead Sea Scrolls. Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered 1946, 47 in Qumran in Israel and in the Dead Sea area. 11 caves were discovered, and they're still finding them. I mean, they're still finding relics. It's not over yet. But 11 caves containing the scrolls that pushed back the dates on biblical texts over 1,000 years. Now, the reason this is important is because they were the oldest records of the Old Testament that had never been edited. This is important because the Old Testament that we see in the modern biblical canon, as good as it is, in some respects is incomplete because it's been edited, selected information was taken out, the information was condensed, rearranged. So you can't make this stuff up. It was in the first cave, in the first large vase, these things 2.5, 3 feet tall, they weren't like little pickle jars. These were big vases. In the first cave, in the first vase, and the first scroll that was pulled out of that vase tells us the context within which everything in our world is happening right now, from a non-religious perspective. Now, the mystery, 1945, they were discovered. These scrolls, they were not made public until 1991. The Vatican fought to keep them from being released, the translations from being released. Political organizations fought. And it was an organization called BAR, Biblical Archaeology Review. A man named Herschel Shanks headed up that organization, almost single-handedly freed the translations for the public. And you have to say, what could possibly be in those scrolls that could warrant that kind of time and energy and effort. And this is what you can't make up. It's in the first cave, in the first vase, in the first scroll they pulled out. It's called the War Scroll, W-A-R. And what it says is that humankind, from the moment we emerged mysteriously on this planet, because we still don't know exactly where we came from. Science can't tell us exactly where we came from. That we have been immersed in an ancient battle between what the scrolls actually say. They identify as the sons of darkness and the sons of light. Now, I offered that in a program recently, and there were women that were offended because they felt it omitted females. They weren't talking about gender 2,500 years ago. It is inclusive of male and female. And the way that we see that battle today between the sons of darkness and the sons of light is a battle between good and evil. That's the way that we see it, and this is not a metaphor. Evil is very real, and it plays out in ways that we don't always see. There's biological evil. There's technological evil. There is evil in social media. There's political evil. There are many psychological evil. There are many forms of evil. What does evil mean? So now we defined divinity as our ability to transcend perceived limitations. Divinity is where we find our power. Divinity is where our imagination comes from, our creativity, our intuition, empathy, sympathy, compassion, forgiveness, love, the ability to love fearlessly and to forgive without expectation of something coming back. These are all examples, expressions of divinity. Evil is anything that denies us our divinity, anything that denies us the ability to express our humanness, to heal our own bodies, to love without fear, to imagine and share our imaginings with another person, to communicate, share those things. Anything that denies divinity is an expression of evil. So with that in mind, the context, everything we're seeing in our world right now, we're seeing this battle raise its ugly head because there is an expiration date on this battle. And the ancient traditions, many of the cycles converging, and many of the modern institutions all are looking at the same point of time. It's about 5 years from now. It's the year 2030. By the year 2030, policies will be enacted all along the way, but they want them in place by the year 2030. And what you're seeing is, you're seeing in the world people and organizations and nations in positions of power. They're jockeying to be in the best place that will benefit them as all of these cycles come to a close in the year 2030. And they identify it in different ways. For United Nations, for example, they have what are called UN SDG 2030, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, 17 goals they want in place by the year 2030. The only way to achieve those goals is to remake this world, and here's the catch, to remake our bodies in ways that we've never been able to do in the past. The World Economic Forum, 1971 is when they formed, and they've always gotten together every year in Davos. They talk about what they want the world to look like. They have every right to do that, no big deal. They had no teeth to implement their vision until the year 2019. 2019, they signed a formal agreement with the United Nations to implement through the Sustainable Development Goals the ideas of the World Economic Forum. And their goal is to essentially digitize the world and have the world managed through a massive artificial intelligence, AI. They believe this is good for the world and what the world needs. And this is where it gets really tricky, because you get into conspiracies and you get into, all kinds of crazy stuff. But this is why I began the way we just did. Is this good for us or is it not? Now we have a benchmark for evil. It's not just a metaphor. It's not just a, chit-chat conversation. Anything that denies our humanness, anything that denies our sovereignty, anything that denies our ability to express our imaginings, our creativity, that denies our love, our forgiveness, our ability to heal. This all begins with the human body. Anything that denies that is a form of evil. Now you begin to apply that standard to what we're being asked, the things that we'll be asked to change. And there's going to be a concerted effort in the next 5 years. It's going to come through legislation. It's going to be masked as very sexy marketing to young people on YouTube. Hey, why wouldn't you want to get a computer chip in your brain if you can play Grand Theft Auto with no keyboard and no cables, just by thinking? To a young person who has never been taught how precious and rare and sacred the sanctity of a human body is, they are not given a reason not to follow that path. So this is a very deep conversation, and I don't know that we're even doing justice to it in the brief time that we have here. But this is the essence of the new book. I've researched it. There's an entire chapter of references for people that want to go and see where all this is happening. And, as a scientist, what I could say is the technology is never good, bad, right or wrong, Guy. There are beautiful places for the technology. What's happening is the technology is advancing faster than the morality of how we apply it in our lives. I'll just give you an example. Elon Musk developed a company called Neuralink. Neuralink is the first computer chips in the human brain to talk to your keyboard or talk to your hard drive with no keyboard, okay? FDA has approved those chips. They are now approved. And there is a proposal to place them into the brains or the body of newborns beginning year 2030 to give them the edge so they can compete. And that's the way it's being positioned. So I personally think it's not a good way to go, and I'll share with you why in just a moment. But the technology itself is a beautiful technology. What if there's a young man or woman who has given their lives in service to their country, military service, and they come home missing arms and legs? And with our robotics, they can have a prosthetic that is run by a computer chip in the brain that allows them to hold their own baby in their arms and to feed themselves and brush their own teeth and comb their own hair. What a beautiful, beautiful thing. It's technology being applied on an individual basis. The proposals are that it be applied en masse to everyone because this is our next evolutionary step. Well, it's not. And let me tell you why. This is one of the I'm just giving you one example. The best science of the modern world now is telling us that there used to be a thinking that when we're born with a finite number of brain cells. And I remember when I was in college, that was the leverage to keep people from drinking in college. They said, every beer that you drink, you're going to lose some of those brain cells, and you've only got so many, so many to start with. Well, now we know that's not true, that the human brain is actually producing new cells. It's coming from a part of the brain, the hippocampus. We're producing those cells until our last breath, but there's a catch. And the catch is, unless those new cells are engaged in a meaningful way, within about 7 days, about a week, they will atrophy and they will die because the body thinks they're not needed. Well, when you begin putting computer chips in the brain that replace the functions of the natural cells, that principle then applies. In biology, it's called use it or lose it. That's a very common term in biology. And it applies to the whole body. You replace the immune system with a chemical, and the immune system says, well, maybe you don't need me anymore. And these are the drawbacks that you don't hear people talking a lot about. This is how you lose a species. When you embrace the technology in one generation into the body that steals our humanness, and then that is passed through epigenetics down to the next generation and next. Pretty soon the body says, you know, we used to do things that way, but we don't need to anymore because these chips or, you know, these chemicals or these sensors are doing it for us. And they begin to atrophy and become a vestige of our past. I personally believe that we are worth preserving. I think that that we're only beginning to understand what it means to be fully human. And the more we know, the more precious, and I'm going to use that word as a scientist, we are a precious, sacred form of life. And I think we owe it to ourselves to know who we are and what we're giving away before we lose it forever. Because once we make that shift that's being proposed, and people can read Ray Kurzweil's book, The Singularity is what it's called, and there are others that are out there. They can look at the proceedings from the World Economic Forum, and Yuval Harari talks about this in the keynotes. I just want to say the United Nations, you can go to their website, you look at the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and they're absolutely beautiful goals that even I want on the surface. Who doesn't want the end of poverty? Who doesn't want food security? Who doesn't want global health? Okay, I want those too. Now you read the fine print, guy, of how they propose to achieve them, and it is horrendous, it is frightening. It is the largest scale of social engineering, not just the world around us, but to achieve those goals, they've got to change the world inside of us. And that's what I'm pushing back on.